the pass away, and it's caught for a touchdown by Hendershot. Tuttle took his shot and still completed it for 6.
Man, probably the only bright spot from Indiana's loss to Ohio State this past week, Tuttle's touchdown, which then resulted in him getting injured and forcing him not being able to play the rest of the game. So welcome into This Week in Indiana Football, brought to you by Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to listen on YouTube or watch on YouTube every Monday through Friday, 9 to 11. Also, be sure to listen on The Ref in Evansville, WBRO Marengo. We got plenty of stuff for you each and every day on that show. Dustin Schutte with me, as always, from Saturday Tradition. How are you doing today, Dustin?
I'm doing great. We're about to embark on the best or the most anticipated weekend of the Big Ten season, I think. We've got the World Series going. NBA basketball's here. The college basketball season's just around the corner. This is a great time of year, so I'm doing great.
It does, and you're definitely very invested in the World Series this year, being down in Georgia. I believe you're a fan, or you've adopted the Atlanta Braves as your team.
I've adopted them. Yep, I gotta have something to talk with people about. So why not make it the Braves? So yeah, I'm full on Braves fan, Braves homer, whatever you want to call me.
So one thing I want to ask you about that specifically, I've noticed a lot of people talking about the cheating Astros. Obviously, Houston is who's playing against Atlanta in the World Series. And me being somebody who doesn't really keep up with Major League Baseball, why are they being called the cheating Astros right now?
Because of the wires underneath their jerseys and all the signal stealing and all that.
Wires?
Yeah, well, that's what they were accused of, yes. Like, so somebody could buzz them, for certain pitches and things like that occurred. Well, I don't even know what year it was. 2000, was it 18, 19?
Oh, so this isn't happening right now. This is previously.
Well, you never know. It could still be happening now.
Okay.
Why not?
Well,
they didn't get punished, so.
Yeah, I could see why, if that were the case, I could see why they'd be being called or being accused of cheating and being called the cheating Astros. But like you said, a very when I was going through pick'ems earlier today, this is probably the most toss-up filled week we have had in the Big Ten. I mean, and another fact of the matter is that I think this is the first week that we've had all 14 teams playing, and they're all playing conference games, playing each other.
Yeah, I believe you're right. I believe this is the first.
I can't believe we're 9 weeks into the season, and it's taken that long for that to happen.
We have had all Big Ten weekends. We've had all teams in action, but we haven't had a full seven game, 14-team slate where it's all Big Ten games. So I believe you're right on that. I think this is the first.
Yeah, we'll get into some of those later, including Indiana and Maryland. I'm trying to push off the Indiana talk because we're obviously going to get to it. This is an Indiana football podcast, but we have done so much, for lack of a better term, we've done so much bitching, or at least I have. Indiana media throughout this entire football season has done so much complaining over the course of the season. We've been beating a dead horse. There's only so much you can say before you wonder. I come into the show and I'm wondering, what can I say differently about this team? I mean, nothing's changed for the better. Everything continues to get worse. And I think specifically, and we'll get into more of it later, the offensive line may be one of the worst offensive lines I've ever seen. And I think that is the catalyst for what is wrong with this Indiana team. We'll get back into Indiana later. But I wanted to talk about some, I don't know if you want to call these pop culture things, but some interesting things that I noticed either today on social media or previously. And I'm not sure how much. I know, Dustin, you're all over Twitter, and you have a hilarious Twitter account and a very deep Nebraska following, if I might add. But there's a couple of things I want to share. And this kind of ties into the World Series. Actually, it very much ties into the World Series, this first thing. Oh, boy. Have you heard of a guy named Mattress Mack?
Mattress Mack?
Yes. Does that nickname ring a bell?
I don't believe so.
Well, first of all, when you think of a Mattress Mack, I'm stealing this from somebody, actually, so I apologize to my friend Nick, but I have to share it. It's absolutely hilarious. If your name's Mattress Mack, there's really only two professions that you could be involved in. You either sell mattresses or furniture, or you're in the adult film industry. But anyway, that's not the point. That's just a little wisecrack that I thought I'd throw in there as well. But Mattress Mack, I believe he's a Houston Astros fan, But he does sell mattresses, as I was alluding to a second ago. But he has made this some sort of guarantee to his customers because he made a bet back in June that the Astros will win the World Series and he'll win boatloads of money. I don't know how much it is. But if the Astros win the World Series, Mattress Mack is giving all of his customers who spend X amount of money, their mattress is free if they spend that money up front. So you're kind of gambling when you purchase a mattress from this guy or making a bet, so to speak, to potentially get your mattress free. And it's also a way to, I guess, if you don't care about the Astros, even in that area, to find someone to root for in this World Series.
So you have to technically buy the mattress.
Let me pull up this specific.
This sounds very interesting.
Right in front of me. So today's the 26th. Today is the last day of the Astros Win It All, Get It All 2021 promotion at GF. I don't know what that means. I guess this is furniture store. Bring your pickup truck for easy, fast pickup or enjoy free delivery when you purchase your mattress $3,000 or more. And if the Astros win it all, your mattress purchase is free.
Okay. So you have to – this sounds very complicated. You have to pay the money up front.
So it's like gambling. So this guy already made a bet, Mattress Mack. He made a bet, and if he wins this money, he's going to be able to pay for these free mattresses for these people.
Uh-huh.
And these customers essentially saying, get in on this with me, kind of make an investment. And if the Astros win, there you go. You get yourself a free mattress. I'm not sure how many people have already taken up this offer, but that's a very intriguing.
And then if they lose, he's in good shape anyway because he's got some, couple $3,000 mattresses he's sold.
It's great marketing, but also it could be very shady. Back to the whole thing with cheating Astros. If he has any sort of influence and he can point shave, I mean, he could obviously make the Astros throw that. I mean, obviously he wouldn't make them. He's got money for them to win it all. So obviously that probably wouldn't happen unless he thought he was going to make more money on these mattresses than he would winning a bet. But
I'm guessing that's a pretty sizable bet. I'm going to tell you right now, my mattress was shipped to me in a box from Amazon, and it was like $200.
So was mine.
Yeah, you roll it out, you take off the plastic, you let it expand, almost like a air mattress type deal. And mine's memory foam. It's actually a really nice. I think
we have the same mattress, dude. Is it a queen size?
Yeah, queen size.
We share the same mattress. Maybe we should open a furniture store.
Okay, let's rephrase that. We don't share the same mattress.
Man.
We own the same brand of mattress. Let's
yes. And was like $600? I believe ours was I could be wrong about that, but
I think mine was less than $300.
Maybe, I don't know. We got ours a couple years ago, but who knows? We evidently have a very similar mattress.
It's
and we don't share the same one, as you said.
And it's queen size, which you would think would be big enough for one person. However, when your dog is in the bed with you, it takes up a lot of space. Does Lily get in the bed?
So, not yet. We've let her up on the bed before, but she doesn't sleep overnight with us on the bed. That's something that maybe as she gets older and we realize she could, not be a nuisance, that we can possibly do. But she sleeps in her crate. It's a pretty sizable crate. She got her bed in there and stuff. So. Yeah, what about, you said Biscuit the dog? He sleeps in
Biscuit the dog sleeps on. Yes, I've tried everything to get him like a dog bed, pillows and blankets and all this to try to get him to sleep on the floor. He's not having it. So, yeah, he's up.
Is Biscuit a shedder?
Yeah, he is.
I feel like you had to question what I said. I feel like you were wondering if I said shitter.
Well, I had to
kind of pause for a second when I said that.
I had to think about the question that was being asked. But yes,
normally we don't swear on this show, but I had to for the sake of the content right there.
Because of his shedding, I do probably have to wash my sheets once or twice a week.
Yeah. Lily, I'm not sure if she sheds. She's only 6 months old. I don't know when dogs are supposed to start shedding, but I haven't noticed anything. I kind of feel like it could be a waiting game, though, if that's the case. But man, this just shows how bad Indiana football really is when it's more fun to talk about these types of things.
Right.
And hopefully you, the listener, are enjoying as well, because why would you want to sit here and moan and groan about something that has been moaned and groaned about for I guess, 9 weeks and probably counting. This isn't the end of it. We still have more to go.
But the end is at least in sight. There's only 5. We've gotten to the halfway point.
Yeah, that's true. And I want to go ahead and I really hope you haven't heard of this. This is almost old news, but it might not be if you haven't heard of this. Are you aware of the Island Boys, Dustin?
Yeah, I know the Island Boys.
You're aware, okay, so you've seen that video of the 2 kids who look like they got French fries as hair singing in the pool.
No, actually, I don't think I. Wait.
Maybe.
Is there a different?
Who are the Island Boys that you're referring to?
About. Yes, I do know who you're talking about.
Have you seen the video?
I've seen the video. Yes, I had to think about it, but yes, I do know what you're talking about.
I think we still need to play it anyway because you can't not. I saw this on Barstool, and then I saw it on the Pat McAfee show after that. And for those of you who haven't heard, or if you're watching on YouTube seeing this, this is a viral TikTok video that, you know what, I don't even need to explain. Let's just sit here and enjoy this 60 seconds of wonder right here.
Cause I'm an island boy, and I've been trying to make. Oh, I'm an island boy. I'm a just island boy. I'm a just island boy. I'm going to get key white wine. You wanna keep that gun. I'll be just staring at the sun. I'll be a fool gazing. I'm like, pool where I'm staying. They're like, you want to be famous? I'm trying to be out the greatest. I'm a Florida boy. I got a real damn tropic. I'm like, damn, I'm the
real damn tropical.
I'm an island boy. Put my vest on, yeah, like a wagwan man. Trying to make it to the top. I'm an island boy.
Just like the
trying
Hoosiers.
to make it. I ain't seen it with a gang swing. You ain't just swing no kind. And through the storm, through the rain. Cause we try home like a line. From the island boy.
Yeah.
Caribbean. Que yo soy cubano. I'm an island boy.
Man.
Put my vest on, yeah.
I could probably make out about 6 words they said, including the word island boy.
Yeah, I didn't understand a lot of that. What I thought you were talking about when you first said that was, I think it was called the Lonely. I thought it was called the Lonely Island Boys.
Oh, the Lonely Island, yeah, the comedy.
Which was Saturday Night Live, like Andy Samberg and I can't remember who else it was, but I think that even Justin Timberlake got involved with it, and they had some NSFW songs that they released. Yeah,
they had a Christmas song called Something in a Box.
Yep, and they had a few others, but that's where my head went when you first said it, and then I got
very similar though.
Yeah,
but the Island Boys, man, they have been the kings of the internet for a while, for the past week or so, by the way. And man, I wish you hadn't seen that because I was hoping to get a pure reaction. But it's been all over Twitter. I'm sure you follow Barstool, Pat McAfee, all that stuff. But
yeah, it absolutely popped up at some point. I don't think I watched the full video. I just probably watched 10 seconds of it and was like, "What the hell is this?" And then moved on about my day.
It's the epitome of mumble rap. I'm assuming you're not a mumble rap fan yourself. I most certainly am not.
I just listen to whatever. Sometimes I listen. I legitimately will listen. I'll go from jazz to blues to country to hip hop to rap to R&B back to country. I mean, I will legitimately listen to just about anything you put on the radio or in my headphones, whatever.
Yeah, I guess that's good. I don't know. I've gone through so many music phases in my life. I went through a middle school crisis where I wanted to be a rapper. And I was really into hip hop, and I'm so glad that phase passed me because that would have been a tragedy if I thought I could go through with that. I would have been, yeah, exactly. That shows what happens when you have parents who say that they'll support you of anything you'll do. Is that kind of thing. They end up looking like they're a large fry from McDonald's, and they're in there with their shorts in the pool and swimming around, singing, mumbling, pointing at the sun, staring at the sun, pointing. I don't know. It's a mess, man. Do you think they were on any sort of substances, sir? I
am not going to speculate on any of that.
It's probably good. Maybe we'll go ahead and put the Island Boys to bed. They've got their own lives to worry about.
They do.
Let's go ahead. There's a couple more notes I want to take care of before we do our favorite thing, which is talk about the Hoosiers. We've got the Mike Tomlin versus James Franklin, different ways in approaching the USC speculation. And yet it's two polar opposite ways of the way things were handled this afternoon. Mike Tomlin, I can't remember which one was first. Was James Franklin before Mike Tomlin?
Well, James Franklin has been kind of asked about it throughout the year a couple different times, and he's never really said no. He just says he hates distractions, and he's talked with the leadership group, which is, his group. I think it's a group of Penn State seniors, basically the leaders of the team. But he never really addressed it, and I don't think he really did. He said he was committed to, in a roundabout way, he said he was committed to Penn State today. I don't know which presser was first. I saw the Franklin presser first, and then I saw the Mike Tomlin.
That's how it was for me. But yeah, Mike Tomlin, he put rumors to bed. Yeah. He almost seemed insulted to be even asked. Not actually, he didn't almost. He was insulted the fact that he was asked that question. I don't know if it's been going on periodically during his press conferences, like with James Franklin, but he was ready to shut it down. James Franklin is beating around the bush, and it almost, when you compare it to the Mike Tomlin response, it almost makes you wonder if something really is going on there.
Yeah, I think when you look at the change in representation and the change of agent, and he said that happened over the summer, and news just kind of broke on this week. I guess it was Monday night. It's always kind of curious to me when that stuff kind of breaks before a big game. You always wonder who knows who, and does somebody let that out to try to get into the minds of the players and the coaches and offer another distraction. I mean, I'm not gonna point to any fingers or anything, but I always am curious about that, especially if it actually did happen over the summer. But James Franklin's not stupid. He's trying to use this as, in my opinion, he's trying to use this as leverage for a bigger salary pool, maybe a bigger contract, maybe better facilities, maybe more support. I don't know what the case is, but the reason he hasn't put it to bed is because there's something he wants. What it is exactly, I don't know. But he's going to try to use that, in my opinion, the USC job, maybe even the LSU job, as leverage to get what he wants if Penn State wants to keep him.
That's true, because even if he wants to stay at Penn State and he's wanting to deal with what you're saying with leverage, once he gets what he wants, he will come out and say things like what Mike Tomlin did. Maybe he won't be as disrespectful sounding, because I don't think James Franklin's necessarily like that, but he would probably be more upfront, because I think you hit the nail on the head. He probably wants something out of this.
Well, and I think the other problem is that this is a recurring theme with James Franklin. It's happened a couple times under when he's been there, and so it makes me like, at some point your board is going to be like, all right, are you sticking around or are you not? So we'll see what happens. And by the way, it's not like, I mean, after that loss to Illinois, let's see what happens, but he may not have much leverage for much longer. So I mean, you probably need to strike while the iron's hot, because if this thing spirals out of control, and let's say they finish, I don't know, 7-5 or 8-4, this was supposed to be a Big Ten championship contending team. So if you fall that far short after going 4-5 a year ago, the cool water is going to be thrown on the heat that you've been given in terms of your being an asset to certain programs like a USC.
Do you think? And maybe I don't think you have to have an answer to this, but do you think James Franklin would take the USC job?
I don't. I think he's a Pennsylvania native. I think Penn State is a better job than USC. I think it's probably he's established himself there. He's done well in recruiting. For the most part, he's been the most consistently competitive program to Ohio State, especially in the Big Ten East. I just think when you look at USC, it's going to be a complete and total rebuild. And I know it's not hard to recruit out in LA, but
he doesn't have the relationships out there that he has in Pennsylvania, obviously.
Well, I don't think so either. I mean, like I said, he's a Pennsylvania guy. He went to school in Pennsylvania. He's been there for 8 years. Like I said, he's done well in recruiting. I think they still have the number one recruiting class. I haven't checked Rivals or 24/7 or ESPN recently, but I think they still have that. So there's a lot going for him. That doesn't mean it won't happen. I mean, we've seen stranger things happen in college football and in the world of coaching. So my opinion is he's not going to take it, but at the same time, you never know. Maybe there's something going on behind the scenes that's frustrating him. I don't know.
This is probably the most dramatic, and maybe you can correct me on this, but the most dramatic college football coaching search since Tennessee's, where everyone thought Jeff Brom was leaving. They had even announced it on certain channels when Jeff Brom didn't actually make any. But what even happened there? We don't have to talk about that specifically, but that was a wild coaching search. There was like 2 or 3 different names that had come up where they said that they had taken the job, including Jeff Brom, and they ended up getting somebody who wasn't one of those people.
Right. Well, I know what initially happened was Greg Schiano was going to be the guy, and then, the entire state of Tennessee revolted.
That's right. There was a revolting.
Everything I think had been done except Greg Schiano signing on the dotted line. Jeff.
It's funny how Tennessee fans can just whine and get exactly what they want, because they did the same thing. I don't know if it was the same year or a previous year where they were complaining about which bowl game they were going to be in, because it was set in stone that Indiana was going to be playing Kentucky in the Gator Bowl. And they switched it at the last minute because Tennessee, I think they had the head-to-head on Kentucky or something like that. Yep. And they were using that as leverage to get the Gator Bowl over instead of being in the Music City Bowl or something like that. I can't remember, but that is so ridiculous that your fans can have that much power to do something like that.
That was incredible. And Mike Leach was a candidate. Jeff Brom was a candidate. I feel like there was somebody else, but I can't remember who it was. But it didn't
Probably
work out
Lane Kiffin.
because Joshua Pruitt brought on Jeremy Pruitt brought on, recruiting, had recruiting scandals and investigations and all kinds of stuff. So it's not been great for Tennessee, even though they kind of got what they wanted.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to see how that pans out in the future. I don't think anybody's really a fan of Tennessee. The SEC doesn't like Tennessee. No one outside of the state of Tennessee likes Tennessee.
Well, you saw what their fans did a couple weeks ago, and you can't paint with a broad brush, but these aren't one-time instances. There's been multiple situations where we've seen, this kind of action from Tennessee fans, and
they will appear in your mentions. You may not even be talking to Tennessee fans directly, but if they find you slandering them on social media, they will find you.
Yeah, that is true. There are a lot of fan bases like that, though.
Well, yeah, but here's the thing: when I had never experienced this is back when I was in college, and Indiana was about to play Tennessee in the Gator Bowl. I had several interactions throughout my young adult life.
Back in college, that was like 3 years ago.
Well, that's what's the other way to say it?
A few years ago when I was in college. You make it sound like you're my age. Back when I was in college, I graduated from college over a decade ago. I'm curious
how many people looking at our faces would think how many years apart we are, because I don't think we look all that different in age.
Well, I appreciate you saying that, but there is a pretty decent age. There's a whole generation between us, basically.
Well, we talked about that, yeah, but heck, did I lose my train of thought? No, we were talking about, interactions with fan bases. So down here, I live in Kentucky, obviously. Basketball reigns supreme here in the state of Kentucky, and the Kentucky Wildcats, even though I'm close to the Louisville area, the UK fan base is wild and rabid, and I've been dealing with them my entire life.
Right.
I only dealt with Tennessee for a few weeks on social media, and that is the most vicious I have. And not that I was necessarily firing. Like I said, they look for you. Kentucky basketball fans can do the same, but they also have a way to back it up. They have the history to show it. Tennessee hasn't really been relevant in years, and they still feel like they have a reason to shout at you. And it's interesting, but yeah. So that the Tennessee fans, we won't keep talking about Tennessee, but just thought I would share since they've kind of been in the news recently anyway, and we were kind of correlating that to the coaching search with James Franklin. And one more thing I want to touch on, then we'll talk some Indiana. Next week, everyone's favorite, the college football playoff ranking show's coming back.
Yeah.
My gosh, the thing that makes all polls irrelevant from here on out. And really, we talked about this before the season, I think. What is the point in the AP poll and coaches poll? We follow this week in and week out. Mm-hmm. Every week, even though we don't have the college football playoff rankings until next week, they're still irrelevant. I don't think the selection committee really pays attention to that, or they try not to.
You don't think they pay attention to it?
Well, they pay attention to it to an extent, but it's obviously not the same people who are submitting those rankings. That's why you see some things that are so out of the ordinary. You look at the coaches' polls and you look at the AP polls, they're usually fairly similar. Sometimes when you have the college football playoff rankings, especially the first week, there's usually a lot of people throwing out, how in the world did this team end up here? They've been this much higher all season long.
Well, yeah, I don't think we need to have the AP. If this is how we're going to do it, then we don't need to have the AP or the coaches poll any longer, because it kind of distorts the opinion. And basically what we're going off of is where teams were ranked in the preseason poll for the most part, as opposed to how they're playing right now, I guess you could say. Like, the weirdest thing to me is what's going to happen, and I don't necessarily disagree with this, so try to follow my train of thought here. What's going to happen is Ohio State is going to be ranked ahead of Oregon. Let's say that Oregon and Ohio State have the same record. Oregon still only lost one game. I don't know who they play or if they play next week. I assume they do. They've got the same record. Ohio State owns the head-to-head. Neither team, Oregon has the better win. Mm-hmm. Ohio State will have a good win if assuming they beat Penn State. But Ohio State's going to be ranked higher than Oregon. And how is that going to make sense? In my opinion, that's how it's going to be. And I don't know how that's going to make sense.
I think the bigger question would be is if they both finish the season 12-1 and you've got them at like the 4 or 5 slots. Now, I feel like if Ohio State is 12-1, they'll probably be a lot higher than 4 or 5, but it also depends on the rest of the rankings and how the rest of the teams do. But if that would be a very interesting thing to see if it comes down to that towards the end. What would the committee favor? Would they favor a team that beat the other team, or would they favor the team that had the better loss, I guess you would say, which would be to that other team because you're talking Ohio State.
Right. Well, and I think Ohio State is the better team. I think they're playing better right now.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where
if it were me, I don't think you can. I feel like the head-to-head, if you have 4 and 5 in the rankings and you have a head-to-head stat for that, I don't think you could deviate away from that. You just can't.
I wouldn't think so. So the thing to me is we talk about this so far in advance, and probably none of what we're going to talk about is going to end up happening. Like, this is legitimately what drives me nuts about the college football playoff, because we get to this point where we talk about, okay, I've got gum stuck on my lip too, by the way. I cannot get it off. It's driving me nuts.
First ice cubes, now gum.
Yeah, exactly. We get to this point where we try to prognosticate and we try to predict what's going to happen and what happens if this situation, what happens in that situation. Most of the time, it's irrelevant because it's hard to go undefeated. It's hard to only lose one game in college football. It doesn't matter how good you are. My guess would be Oregon's probably going to drop another game somewhere down the road. I don't know that Ohio State will. They could. I mean, they still have to play Penn State, Michigan State. So this is – and it almost kind of detracts from what makes the sport so good. Before we had this, even the BCS era, there were two teams that would go into the national championship game. So you would have those 5 to 8 schools maybe that were constantly trying to get to the national championship game. But everybody else, it didn't care. You were trying to get to a bowl game. You were trying to win your rivalry games. You were trying to get to 8 wins. And I think that the college football playoff has kind of watered down that. And that's what you see. When a team loses bowl eligibility, players opt out of the season. If a team gets to even a New Year's Six bowl, look at Florida last year. Half the damn team opted out in the when they play the Cotton Bowl, I think, against Oklahoma and got waxed. So that's why it's frustrating to me. Plus, nobody has ever explained any rhyme or reason behind these rankings and how it changes from one year to the next, 1 week to the next. It's like they changed their criteria. I would just like to see some criteria laid out because I don't feel like there is any.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I want to go back to what I was talking about with the head-to-head, because I feel like if you have that stat and it doesn't come down to that, if you're making a decision, then why would Power 5 teams schedule out of conference matchups with teams like, Ohio State playing Oregon if they're not going to have an impact on how you get into the college football playoff? I feel like that's an incentive to play that kind of game, because if you have that leg up because of that, that should propel you into the Final Four. I hope that didn't deviate too much about the point you were making, but it's something that I was kind of dwelling on after I was talking about that earlier.
No, but that points to the point of, or gets to the point of needing criteria, because if you're a Power 5 team, let's just say, this happened to Wisconsin a few years ago, and I don't remember who all was on their schedule, so forgive me, but this, I think, was 2017 maybe, and they were undefeated heading into that Big Ten championship game. I think they were ranked in the top 4. They played BYU, who was really bad that year, and they played 2 other, like maybe a MAC school and either an FCS or another group of 5, but they didn't play anybody in the non-conference. The Big Ten West was okay, but it was relatively weak that season. I don't remember their crossover games. Point is, they didn't have a really tough schedule, and yet had they beaten Ohio State in that championship game, they'd have been 13-0 and playing in the college football playoff. It didn't matter who they played in the non-conference. So that gets back to the point of, I guess, yes, if you lose the game, then playing like Penn State, for example, if they would have only lost that game to Iowa, they have the win over Auburn, then they get some other big wins. Maybe that Power 5 win helps them. But if you are able to go undefeated because you have a terrible schedule, I would schedule that way all the time.
The perfect scenario for how the playoff should be, I know they're talking about expanding to, I think 12 is what was proposed over the summer. It needs to be 6 teams. The top 2 teams get a bye. And then the 5 teams that are, you don't even worry about rankings. Maybe you should if one conference is particularly bad, but your 5 conference champions plus the group of 5, the best of that. I think that would be ideal. It's almost set up like the NFL. Because you have to win your divisions to get a playoff spot, or unless you're in the wild card. That would be my – go ahead.
If you do away with rankings, though, how are you going to determine who's the best group of 5 team?
Well, and I'm not saying do away with rankings altogether. What I should have said is do away with – well, I guess you would have to have rankings. You still have to put them in spots.
Right.
But I don't know. That's an interesting dynamic. So that will never happen. If they expand it, it's probably going to be to 8 or 12 teams. But just a thought I wanted to throw out there. Man, we've gone over 30 minutes without talking about Indiana football, and this is usually only an hour-long podcast at most. We've still got to do our pick'em. So let's go ahead and bring the horse back out for another beatdown. I don't know what this horse's name is. I guess Hoosier, man.
It's starting to look like a skeleton.
Yeah, there's only so much more you can do to it. We're not animal abusers here. It's just a figure
officially.
of speech,
it's officially Halloween, but we've had to drag this horse out of the barn every week for 7 games now.
It's almost like I go back to this. I've been thinking about it a lot recently. In our very first podcast, we were speculating what it would be like for Indiana to go on the road and play in an environment like Kinnick Stadium and how Michael Penix would respond. And I made the comment, what if Michael Penix goes out there and throws a pick on his first drive? And he not only did that, he threw a pick 6. I remember your response to that was, don't do it again. Well, he did do it again.
Yep.
And look where we are now. It's almost like, what is it? A shaman. I saw the future. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. I know what you're saying. Yeah. Basically Nostradamus here.
Nostradamus.
Yeah. Nostradamus.
But it's been worst case scenario. You couldn't have drawn up a worse season for Indiana. Indiana could have been 6-0, lost to Ohio State, whatever. It doesn't matter. They got their ass whooped regardless to Ohio State. Who knows? But I don't know why I went there, why that was the comment that I made. I think I was trying to lead into I think I was trying to lead into the game itself.
Well, we'll get let's just dive right in.
just dive right in. Like I said earlier in the very beginning of the episode, I played a clip on what was more than likely the only bright spot from the game. Indiana's first drive, a response to Ohio State's opening touchdown. Jack Tuttle marches downfield. A lot of people were talking about how that was Nick Sheridan's best play calling drive of the season and how things might turn around there in this game. But Jack Tuttle gets hurt on the touchdown pass. And from there, nothing was the same. You got Donovan McCulley coming in, and I think we heard in the press conference earlier this week that they weren't ready for Donovan McCulley to come in. They had a few things drawn up for him to be able to come in and relieve Jack Tuttle, but Indiana was not ready for Donovan McCulley to take over the reins of the entire offense, and it was absolutely evident on Saturday.
Well, one of the things that Tom Allen said was they weren't going to worry about his red shirt, Donovan McCulley's red shirt. And another thing is, he was going to play, and they were going to try to get some sort of spark or life on the offensive side. And as they go out of the screen here, one of the things that I said about that was I think that Tom Allen and Nick Sheridan and whoever else is involved in that decision-making was legitimately concerned that they would not get through that game without Jack Tuttle getting hurt because Indiana's offensive line is so bad. And that's exactly what happened. Now, I'm not saying that I was right. I'm just saying there's no doubt in my mind at some point that crossed their mind and we've got to get this kid ready because Ohio State's defensive line is really good and our offensive line is really bad. So if anything happens, he's got to be ready to take some snaps and at least give us some semblance of an offense. And really that
didn't happen.
It wasn't the case. I mean, that game was over. I don't know what the score was at the end of the first quarter. I can't remember, but that game was over by halftime. I know that much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was probably the worst defensive half in the entire season for Indiana. And honestly, I don't really blame the defense. You played well all season, and you've got somebody like Ohio State coming in. There's got to be some give, and I think that Indiana defense was just kind of letting it happen this week. Obviously, they were trying. I'm not trying to say to give them a benefit of the doubt and say they deserve to play bad, but I think there's only so much will that you have as a player when you're not getting help from your offense, especially when you're playing a team like Ohio State who's ready to light you up the way that they did.
Well, and I think what you have to remember too is this is an Ohio State team that is playing. This is the most explosive offense that they've had under Ryan Day, and that's saying something. I mean, you look at this team; they've got Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, and Jackson Smith and Jigba all over 500 receiving yards, and I think they've combined for 17 touchdown catches. I might be wrong on that. Jeremy Ruckert, the tight end, has been an awesome red zone threat. He's got 3 touchdown receptions. Travion Henderson looks like a Heisman Trophy candidate. He not only can run the ball, he can catch it out of the backfield. He's been outstanding. Their offensive line is enormous. C.J. Stroud in his last 3 games has thrown for 1,000 yards, 14 touchdowns, no interceptions, and is completing passes, I think, at a 73% completion rate. Nobody is stopping this offense, excuse me. I can't blame Indiana's defense because I think there are a couple factors. One, you're correct in that they're pretty much beaten down at this point. They're getting no help from their offense. You can't be on the field that often throughout the course of a 12-game season and not lay an egg every once in a while. Mm-hmm. So that's number one. Number two is Ohio State's, even if Indiana's defense was playing its best game, Ohio State still probably would have scored 40 points. It's just you have to be able to, if you're going to beat Ohio State in some capacity, you have to be able to score points, and Indiana can't do it. They can't do it.
Yeah, and I had a point there, and for some reason, as you were talking about, I lost it. But man, my mind is completely. My brain is gone right now. I'm trying to talk my way through it and figure out what's going on. Trying to stall, and I feel like we all do that in radio sometimes.
This is the Indiana offense, and if we could draw it out, if it was in podcast form, this would be it, just stalling.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where you've gotten to the point in the season. I mean, fans were gone at halftime, and you can't. Anybody would have left. I would have left at halftime. You've seen this product all season. Nothing's getting better. It's at this point, I know it's not going to get better. I mean, maybe Donovan McCulley comes in and he shows flashes of what he could be like in the future, but Donovan McCulley is not going to be able to lead this team the same way that a healthy Michael Penix or a healthy Jack Tuttle would be able to. And so that's what I think is we're about ready to endure the rest of the season. I feel bad for Donovan McCulley. He had to get thrown into a game like that against Ohio State. It seems like that tends to happen with Indiana quarterbacks at some point. I feel like Peyton Ramsey got shoved in there a few times when he was young. Michael Penix obviously did the same. I mean, it's a rite of passage as an Indiana Hoosier to have to be thrown into the fire, I feel like. But
think about that. Okay, so you say that Donovan McCulley he can't lead the offense, and I think I agree with you to an extent in the sense that he's a young kid. He's having to learn on the fly. He was supposed to be the third string quarterback this year and probably utilize redshirt. The problem I have, though, is those names you just mentioned. Look at some of the guys who have been thrown into the fire in previous seasons. Peyton Ramsey did pretty well when he stepped in for Richard Lego. Michael Penix, who won the starting job, he played pretty well. This, to me, is all about who's running the show on the offensive side, and I hate to keep but your guys are not prepared, and the offensive scheme is not working, and you're reluctant to try anything new, at least in my opinion. And that first drive was great, but we didn't see it the rest of the game. And I mean, I know that some of that is because of Jack Tuttle, but why are you not trying? Your football coaches aren't stupid. At some point in that game, they realized they weren't going to win. So why aren't you trying some more stuff? Why aren't you try to create some exciting plays? See if you can get some sort of momentum to work. I know Ohio State's really good, but what's the difference between losing 70-7 and what was the final score? Was it 54-7?
54-7.
54. Yeah. So what's the difference? If you lose by 70 or you lose by 40, you got blown out. You were embarrassed. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
Try something new.
I'm curious to see because at this point, I don't think it matters if Indiana is able to pull a rabbit out of the hat and win 6 games and get to a bowl game and maybe even win that bowl game. I still think Tom Allen needs to go ahead and move on with the offensive coordinator job because, it's worked in the past when you've had healthy players, and I'm sure Nick Sheridan, the more he does it, will continue to get better. But you can't learn on the fly at a Power 5 school. This is obviously his first coordinator job. He's been a quarterback's coach at Indiana. He was the quarterback's coach before he was the offensive coordinator at Indiana. Other than the season that Kalen DeBoer is here, which is interesting. Kalen DeBoer was in charge of quarterbacks. Nick Sheridan was a part of the tight ends, I believe. So I'm not sure Nick Sheridan really is the guy, not only to be calling plays, but I'm sure he's not even your best option to be the quarterback's coach. Maybe he is on this current staff, but I'm sure there's somebody out there who can take over the reins and be that quarterback's guy that you want, like Kalen DeBoer was.
Right. Well, I think, it's a lot of responsibility. I mean, the thing you have to remember about Kalen DeBoer is even though it was on a lower level, he was a head coach. And a successful head coach. A successful head coach at the NAIA level. So he understands how to kind of balance management. This is the first time Nick Sheridan's been thrown in to not only coaching a position group, but also running the offense. And I think that there's a little bit of him being overwhelmed. Now, I don't know that. I obviously haven't talked to him. I don't know what's going on in his mind.
I got to stop you there. But how you had last year, you were 6-2. You have all this success. Michael Penix is getting all these accolades, and then the preseason hype coming into this season. If you were you had to be way more overwhelmed last year. You're dealing with COVID, and you find success that way. How is this year that much more difficult?
Because you don't have in my opinion, you don't have as many restrictions. You had a safety valve in Whop Phillier last year. You could get him the ball, he could make plays, and that really opened things up down the field. I mean, again, we talked with Mitchell Page about this, and he said I was right. So I'm gonna go with the fact that he said I was right. You can't. Indiana doesn't have anybody that can do that. It was an extension of what he did was an extension of the run game. So even though Indiana's rushing attack was not good, the fact that they could do that, it would draw in the defense. They had to prepare for it. There's nobody that they can get a quick pass out to who can turn 0 yards or a loss into 8 yards. There's nobody who can turn a 3-yard gain into a 15-yard gain. And what that does is it brings in the defense, and they have to account for that as part of basically the rushing attack. And that's why Michael Penix was unable to hit Ty Freifogel down the middle of the field deep. They just don't have that this year. And so when you don't have that, and on top of that, your run game is bad, then teams are just going to.
Here's the thing. I think Indiana has good running backs of the ones that are left. Excuse me.
Correct.
This offensive line is a mess.
Yes.
I think Stephen Carr, even the walk-ons, Davion Irvin, Poindexter, Chris Childers, if they had somebody, even just a few offensive linemen that could be consistent and block for them, you would see vast improvement. I don't remember if it was Mitchell Page or someone talking about Kevin Wilson, but the quote was initially from Kevin Wilson saying that if you don't have an offensive line, you don't have an offense, period. And that's exactly why Indiana is so terrible, I believe.
I would agree with that.
Who wouldn't agree? Like I said, we're hitting a horse that's like, well, come on, this. Like we're literally torturing this animal. Why did we bring it out, Dustin?
I tried to tell everybody. The biggest red flag to me was that Idaho game. When you cannot rush for more than 3.4 yards per carry against an FCS team, I don't know. I don't follow Idaho football, but I'm guessing they're not good because they've never really been good.
Let's take a look. And you can keep saying, but I'm gonna take a look. Just curious to see how this Idaho team is.
When you can't run the ball for around at least 5 yards against that kind of opponent, that's a big red flag. And I know that Indiana has run the ball better against some other teams, but that to me, I was like this. I thought at that time this offense is in serious jeopardy because if you can't even, the goal should be. I was always taught the goal should be about 3.5 yards, right? Maybe 3.4 yards is the math. Whatever it takes, you get 10 yards. If you were to hit that average, I think it's 3.4. But the fact that Indiana could not get to 4 yards, 5 yards, 6 yards per carry against an FCS team, Travion Henderson is averaging 8.77 yards per carry against Oregon, against Indiana, Rutgers, Maryland. And I know those aren't stellar, stalwart teams, but it's Power 5 competition.
Or Power 5 opponents, yep. Yeah, and just taking a look at this Idaho schedule, they beat Simon Fraser before they beat Indiana, which is a school from Canada. We talked about that a long time ago. They beat them 68-0. Their only other win this season is to Portland State. They beat them 42-35. So this Idaho team, they also got shut out by another Power 5 team, Oregon State, 42-0. So that just goes to show.
Yep.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head once again. This you saw it at the beginning. I don't know what it was. Now, I know we've talked about this before. You didn't think that it would be in the form and fashion that it has happened, but that Indiana would be closer to a losing type of record than a perfect record when they played Ohio State. And I know we brought that up numerous times, including last week, but that's what happens whenever you got someone with an unbiased opinion. They're able to see through, take off the crimson-tinted glasses. Yep. And I do think I'm a realist. I understand when Indiana's bad and when they have issues, but sometimes there's a part of you that just – you've seen the up climb of this team under Tom Allen, and you kind of adopt that LEO. Like they're going to find a way to do it as they've done it the past 3 years, including this year. But it's wearing off. I believe in Tom Allen as a head coach. I do think he is the guy for Indiana right now. But the LEO, the high of it, it's back down to just get to 6 wins and win a bowl game. That's what it is right now, and that's not where you wanted to be right now at this point in the season.
Well, and I think you look back at it. What's going to be incredibly interesting to me is to see what this team does the rest of this season and then next season, because it was a weird year last year. A lot of those teams in the Big Ten are not accustomed to playing in front of an empty crowd. And I hate to bash on Indiana fans, but that has been somewhat of an MO in terms of playing in front of an empty, maybe not empty, empty's not the right word. A half full.
I don't think the home.
Stadium.
Go ahead, keep going. Sorry.
The half crowd, 3/4 stadium. Think about that compared to, and Indiana's already got, what does Memorial Stadium hold? Is it 60,000 something around there?
Close to it, yeah.
Okay, so we'll say 60,000 just for argument's sake, and you have Michigan 100,000 plus, Penn State 100,000 plus, Ohio State 100,000 plus, and now they're playing in front of nobody, and I think that does make a difference. And I know people say that eventually, you got to bring your own juice, but I think that makes a big difference. And so that was one of the things I also wanted to see out of Indiana this year was how are you going to respond when you play in front of a packed house? What's it going to be like when you get punched in the face and you have 85,000 screaming fans?
Yeah.
They haven't responded from that first gut punch. And again, I don't know. I would have never guessed Indiana would be 2-5. I don't want to make it seem, but 500, 6-6, 7-5 is something I thought was very real. And we've mentioned
this. Tweet that 2-5 is not out of the question. I do.
Well, that was after what we saw against the Iowa team because I was that was so bad and it hasn't gotten any better.
It's really, I think this is where I was going, where I was wanting to go earlier before I lost my train of thought in the beginning of this conversation. But I genuinely think, from at least an offensive perspective, the Penn State effect that I've talked about from last year, I think it has an effect on Indiana. That the way that Iowa game went, there is absolutely no way that Nick Sheridan or anybody on the offensive staff thought that was going to happen. And certainly they didn't have, I mean, obviously they had a game plan, but I'm sure they didn't have a contingency plan for how to go with that for the rest of the game. And since then, I feel like if that didn't happen, I'm not saying Indiana would be 6-0 or they would be having a miracle season, but I don't think we would be talking about some of these issues that we're talking about because this team would have been able to get some confidence. They would have been able to have something to build off of. They haven't had hardly anything to build off of. Even in the games against Idaho and WKU, there wasn't really any true evidence there to say, all right, we found our niche on offense. Let's figure out how to do this. And we're already 9 weeks in the season. And if you haven't figured it out now, when are you going to figure it out?
Yeah, I mean, I think this team is what it is right now, and you just hope to God that the defense can keep teams out of the end zone, and your offense and Campbell can I got the name right. I blanked on his name. Charles Campbell.
Charles Campbell, yeah.
I was blanking on his name. Charles Campbell, you hope that you can get a touchdown and maybe Charles Campbell can knock down some field goals for you to win some games. I don't like you're not going to count on 34 points. You might not even be able to count on 24 points.
It's crazy. The Indiana is still somehow not they're somehow not the worst scoring offense in the Big Ten, which is surprising to me.
Well,
they're
12. Not. Okay, yes, technically you're right, but I mean, when you look at Big Ten opponents, they're the worst.
That's probably true, but I'm curious, what happened in the non-conference that made it so different?
Well,
I guess they put up 30-something on WKU and then 50-something. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe if that's those two games.
Rutgers beat who's below them? It has to be Rutgers. And maybe
it was Northwestern and maybe –
Oh no,
maybe
Illinois
this might be outdated. I thought it was Illinois, but you would have thought with the 9 overtime game. I'm surprised we didn't talk about that earlier with the Illinois Penn State stuff.
Illinois is probably down there. Yeah, that's another one that fits that description. Who was the other one? Who'd you say it was?
Northwestern.
Illinois? Northwestern. Well, yeah. I mean, I guess that's true.
Yeah.
All three of those offenses are bad.
I think it's harder to swallow for Indians because they were supposed to be or expected to have a really good offense. That's why it seems like it's so much worse than I guess it actually. I mean, it's still really bad. Don't get me wrong, but man, we're going a lot longer than I thought we would. It's time to move on. We'll give our predictions for Indiana, Maryland later on. But let's go ahead and get into the rest of our preview and pick'ems. A lot of good games, a lot of what I feel like are toss-ups. I hope we have some differences here because I'm still 5 games back. I've got to figure out a way to make up some ground, and this could be a week to do it if we end up going separate ways on some of these games. And I put some of them out of order. I put some of probably what could be the closer games, or maybe not closer, but the more premier games up to the front. So we'll go and go through. Other than that, we're going to go in chronological order when they're going to occur. So first up, we've got number 9 Iowa at Wisconsin. And I was going to share a stat from that, but I think I should let you share a stat. I saw you tweet something earlier, Dustin. It's the amount of turnovers that Iowa has forced compared to the amount that Wisconsin has given up. I think they're on complete opposite ends of the spectrum right now.
They are. It's almost even. Iowa has forced 21 turnovers. Wisconsin has turned the ball over 17 times. Iowa's plus 12 in turnover margin. Wisconsin is -7. Now, having said all of that, I think Wisconsin is actually playing better now. I think they found a little bit of maybe thunder and lightning is not the right word, but with Ches Malusi and Braylon Allen coming on, that's a nice 1-2 punch that they have. I actually think that Wisconsin, this is going to sound crazy, might have more explosiveness on the offensive side than Iowa does. I don't think that they're as consistent, but in terms of, I'm going to give you the ball, I need you to go 75 yards. Wisconsin has that better option with the 1-2 punch than Iowa does. Wisconsin's favored. I'm picking Wisconsin.
What's interesting about that, though, is it's almost like Iowa may start suffering from the same issues that Indiana is currently suffering from. And it's the fact that Iowa has relied so heavily on the turnovers for their success. And if they can't get those, which I'm not saying Wisconsin won't turn the ball over, but Iowa is probably relying on that to an extent to come out on top in this game.
They are. I think the key to this is Graham Mertz throwing the ball 10 to 15 times. No more. He can't throw the ball that often because they will intercept. They will pick it off. But it was what I think is key in this game. I don't mean to keep going over on this, but this is probably I know Michigan State's huge, Ohio State, Penn State's huge. This is a really intriguing game to me. It might be the most intriguing under the radar game because I don't know what's going to happen. But one of the things that you have to look at is how poorly Iowa's offense. Everybody's talking about the defense and David Bell and Aiden O'Connell, giving up so much yardage and all that. The offense couldn't move. They scored 7 points against Purdue. And Purdue's
Big Ten just got some really bad offenses this year all around, don't they?
Correct. They do. I don't know. Wisconsin's defense is way better than Purdue's. So if Iowa cannot force turnovers in this game, and a lot of those have come through interceptions, and I don't expect Graham Mertz to throw the ball more than 15 times, I think that Iowa is going to be in trouble, especially on the road. So we might, as crazy as this season has been, Wisconsin starting 1-3, looking god-awful through the first 4 games, they still have a legit shot to get to Indianapolis.
That just shows how wild and unpredictable the Big Ten West is. And you make a very compelling argument. Obviously, I wasn't thinking about all of the factors that you were talking about. I went with Iowa in this one, but you almost had me regretting my pick. I hope I'm incorrect about that.
Every time I've picked against Iowa, I've been wrong, so you'll probably be right.
There we go. We'll rely on that to be a deciding. So there we go. We already got one difference. Next up, Rutgers at Illinois. Obviously, Illinois coming off of a literally historic win in 9 overtimes against Penn State. What is this 2-point conversion stuff that they've got a new rule in overtime that caused all of the hubbub or whatever during that game? But another thing, Illinois is going to be without Artur Sikowski in this game. And correct me if I'm wrong. Is Brandon Peters, is he fine now or is he hurt still too?
I think he's fine. I mean, it doesn't matter who plays quarterback for Illinois. They're not good at quarterback. I don't mean to. That's the way it is.
It would have been interesting to see Art Sikowski go up against his former team with Rutgers, though.
I think. Oh yeah, that is a good point. Yeah. I think Rutgers coming out of the bye, they got their ass kicked in 3 consecutive weeks by Michigan, Ohio State, Michigan State. They look dead against Northwestern. I have faith in Schiano. I think the emotion that Illinois had in last week's game, and when you factor in the Sikowski injury, and Chase Brown got a little dinged up in that game, we'll see if he's ready to go. I think Rutgers wins this game.
I have the same as well. I don't trust Illinois at all. I mean, we saw what happened whenever they got really hyped up over the Nebraska win, and nothing really became of that either. So I think Illinois is a work in progress. I do think Brett Bielema will eventually have this team rolling, at least in terms of the Big Ten West, because every year it seems like somebody can get the ball rolling in the Big Ten West. There's not ever a constant. Obviously, you have Iowa, Wisconsin. They're usually both good, but there's no Ohio State over in the Big Ten West where you're like, they're going to be in the Big Ten championship. So we'll see what happens with Illinois in the future. Like I said, I'm taking Rutgers as well. We got to move on. Next up, Minnesota at Northwestern.
Minnesota can run the ball really well. They've got 5 running backs that have hit 100 yards in one game this season. Northwestern, as we saw last week, cannot stop the run. They're the worst team in the Big Ten at stopping the run. So I'm going with Minnesota. 4 straight wins. They get to 6-2, and they are also in the Big Ten West race.
Very, very ridiculous. And they've been dealing with injuries as well. I know Chris Altman-Bell's back, correct? We talked about that last week. Yep. So they've got power in the passing attack once again. So I'm also going with Minnesota. I remember talking earlier in the season. I wouldn't be surprised if Northwestern loses every game here on out. I know they got that win over Rutgers, but it's Rutgers. You got 2 teams that are historically, or at least Rutgers, historically known for being bad in their division. Northwestern just happens to be on that kind of side of the ball right now in the West. Next up, a matchup that I think has been interesting every time it's been played. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but we got Purdue at Nebraska, and I think it stays interesting just when you factor in. I feel like Purdue and Nebraska, they're both of them are very unpredictable. You don't really know what's going to happen when either of them take the field.
You don't, and I feel like Purdue and Nebraska are very much the same in the sense that when Jeff Brown was hired, and the way his offensive ingenuity worked, people thought that Purdue was going to be the new power in the Big Ten West. And then Scott Frost gets hired, and his offensive ingenuity and, what he did at UCF, and all of a sudden Nebraska was going to be at the top of the Big Ten West, and neither one is working out quite the way anybody had expected just yet. So I hate this game, man. I don't know. What Nebraska team are we going to get? What Purdue team are we going to get? These teams
that's the thing is there's nothing. Yeah, I think they have an identity. It's not as bad as Indiana in terms of identity. One part of
what their identities are? It's inconsistency.
It's inconsistency. Like they're known for being unpredictable.
Correct.
I think Nebraska is also known for being horrific on special teams. I don't know if you call that an identity feature, but that could be a difference. That's for sure.
It could be a difference.
Why is their kicker so bad? How can you have a kicker at Nebraska that's that bad?
But he's been good at times. That's the thing. He was an all Big Ten. He was the Big Ten kicker of the year last year. He's just struggled this year.
How many extra points has he missed, though? It's PAT. Didn't he get one blocked as well?
I have to go through all the games. I don't know. 3 or 4 maybe he's missed. I don't remember the exact number. But, yeah, I'm not saying you're wrong. He's just not – I don't think he's as bad as people label him. He's been – again, the key here is inconsistent, and that's 100% true. I think he made a 50-yard field goal. I don't remember the exact yardage, but I think he made a 50-yard field goal in that Minnesota game.
Followed it up with a mix. I
think he did. Point. I think he missed either an extra point or a short field goal in that game. I have to go back and rewatch all of that. But
be like that guy who says he's going to jump in front of a bus, man.
I hate this game. I don't know who to pick. I'm gonna
flip
go
a coin right now.
I took Purdue
as well, man. I was hoping you'd go the other direction, but I took Purdue. I think the reason I took Purdue is, and maybe this is cliche at this point, but I just think Purdue's going to make less mistakes. I think that's what's going to come down to.
That's what that boils down for me as well, because the way I lay this out, again, I've talked way too much about all these games, but every game is so freaking interesting. I'm going to watch all these games 3 times. I think the thing about this game is, real quick, to me, this is going to be a close game because I think both teams are evenly matched. I think Adrian Martinez may not be quite as healthy as he was earlier in the season, so I think it kind of evens things out at the quarterback position. And the issue I have is if it's a close game, whether Nebraska's ahead or down, they've not won a close game in God knows how long. And that,
you think that could be the sole reason that Scott Frost, not the sole reason, but that's enough for him if they aren't bowl eligible. Actually, let me stop you one more time, then we'll move on from this game. Does Nebraska have to win this to be bowl eligible? I don't know their record right now or what it needs to be or what their schedule looks like ahead. But is this a must win for them?
Absolutely. Because they're 3-5. You lose this game, they're 3-6.
Okay.
And let me
and they have Ohio State on the schedule. I know that.
Exactly. They play Ohio State. I think that they're capable. I'm not saying they would, but they're capable of beating Wisconsin and Iowa. They're not going to beat Ohio State. I mean, I don't think anybody else is, so that's not a knock on Nebraska. So if you want to get to bowl eligibility, you have to beat Purdue to get there.
Speaking of bowl eligibility, we got Indiana at Maryland, and this is a game, too, where you look at the rest of Indiana's schedule. You have to win this if you want to be 6-6, because other than that, you have Michigan. I don't want to say they can't beat Michigan. Sometimes people wonder how good Michigan actually is. I think it's safe to say right now that's probably a loss. You've got Purdue on your schedule. You've got Rutgers on your schedule. You've got Minnesota on your schedule. None of those are gimmies, but your route to 6, if you disinclude Michigan, is everybody else. Therefore, this game against Maryland, you have to win it, or it's looking pretty bleak for the Hoosiers. We've talked enough about what they've got going on, at least from the Indiana side of things. But Dustin, what do you have for this?
I'm taking Maryland. I've got no faith in Indiana, especially without Jack Tuttle and Michael Penix both week to week. I know Maryland's dealt with some injuries, but basically, to me, I think this is probably two evenly matched teams. And when you look at two evenly matched teams, I go with the best player, and I think Talia Tagovailoa is going to be the best player on the field.
Yep. And here's what it came down to for me. And this is – I initially, when I was going through these, I didn't watch – full disclosure, I was at a wedding this past weekend. I mentioned this on Twitter for those who follow me on Twitter. I didn't see the Indiana-Ohio State game live. So I saw the score. I saw what was going on. I saw that Jack Teller was injured and all that stuff. But I always knew that Donovan McCulley was this guy who was supposed to be the next big thing for Indiana football, or Josh Hoover. I'm not going to get into that right now. But when I saw on the highlights after the fact how unprepared McCulley looked for this offense, being thrown in after Jack Tuttle got injured, that's what drove me to make the decision that Indiana is not going to be able to score, not just on Maryland, on anybody.
Right.
I mean, we're going to obviously Donovan McCulley is going to have an extra week under his belt, and this will be his first week of starting reps in practice, and so he's probably going to look a lot better than he did against Ohio State. But this is still a true freshman quarterback who wasn't being groomed to be starting it all this season. He was going to be redshirted had things not gone downhill. So this is somebody who may be good in the future, but I don't think he's ready to lead this offense. And if Indiana is going to win, which I don't have them winning, I picked Maryland, they're going to have to win this on defense.
Yeah, I mean they're going to have to probably create some defensive or create some turnovers and get the offensive in ideal field position, advantageous situations, and again hope that maybe they get a touchdown or two and then put the rest on Charles Campbell to not get some points on the board.
Charles, if Indiana wins this game, Charles Campbell might be special. I don't want to say Big Ten Player of the Week because that's not going to happen.
Well, special teams.
He'll be special teams Player of the Week. Yeah,
absolutely.
So that's one thing to keep an eye on. Chuck Campbell watch breakfast ball. He talks about that. Did you hear that comment, Dustin? Before, he loves the breakfast ball practice shot. He's talking about when people call timeouts, but he gets to kick the ball anyway before time. I know you're a golfer, so I thought maybe you understood that. He mentioned that because it happened to him in the WKU game. That was the game where he kicked like 4 or 5 field goals. But
gotcha.
Anyway, moving on. We got 2 ranked-on-ranked matchups left. Number 20, Penn State at number 5, Ohio State. I know this is a game that I think a lot of people are looking forward to. And Dustin, I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't think this is going to be close. I think Ohio State's going to blow Penn State out of the water.
Well, I tell you, James Franklin didn't seem quite as focused. He said when he was asked about, the change in agents and how committed he was to Penn State, he said, I'm fully focused on Illinois. Going into the big house is going to be a big task. Well, they play Ohio State, and Ohio State plays in the Horseshoe. James Franklin is usually very detailed. He usually comes to the press conferences with his opening script. I mean, I think he did. I didn't watch this week's live. I haven't gotten to it yet, but I will. So for him to have those kind of lapses, that just doesn't happen. And that's not to say he can't have a mistake, but that's just to say I don't know that everything. I don't know how things are going in that locker room right now. PJ Mustipher up front is out, and that's obviously a huge deal. Their run defense was not good against Illinois. Their red zone defense is still really good. I don't know that it matters. I think Penn State will keep it closer than most people think just because this is kind of a pride thing, but I do think Ohio State wins. I
see this, and I know we don't give score predictions, but kind of like you're saying, close for a while, but I think the final score is going to be something along the lines of like 45-21, where it's not pretty by the end of the game.
I could see that. I could see, yeah. I think that it's going to be high scoring total up there for Ohio State. And much like I don't know how, especially if Sean Clifford's not at 100%, I don't know how Penn State's going to plan to move the football. So they have to rely on their defense, and I don't think you're going to be able to rely on your defense for that long against Ohio State. Just too explosive.
Next up, we've got Big Ten Game of the Week, College Game Days Game of the Week, and likely a matchup between two teams where the winner will probably be deemed Ohio State's best competition for the rest of the season if Ohio State doesn't lose to Penn State. Number 6, Michigan at number 8, Michigan State. This is a matchup that not a single person thought was going to be 7-0 versus 7-0. Everyone thought Michigan was still on a downward spiral. Everyone obviously was talking about Michigan State potentially being the worst team in the Big Ten. This is essentially a dream scenario for both teams right now, which is wild.
Yeah, it's been fun to watch these two teams. Michigan does it with the ground. They do it with their defense. Michigan State, they can do it on the ground. They can do it through the air. I mean, they've won games a lot of ways. The thing that sticks out to me is Michigan's kind of a one-trick pony on the offensive side. They do not ask Cade McNamara to throw the ball a lot. He's thrown 166 passes this season. That ranks 119th in the nation. Michigan State's pass defense is the worst in the Big Ten. It's giving up nearly 300 yards per game through the air. To me, though, the thing that separates this game and separates the winner from the loser is I like the fact that Michigan State has won games with explosive plays. They've won games on offense. They found a way to win a game on special teams against Nebraska. They found a way to win a game on defense against Indiana. I think that Michigan State beats Michigan this weekend.
I just realized I got to catch up real quick. I didn't mark down the previous
one.
I know what it is. I know it's Ohio State. But, yeah, Michigan State. See, I'm glad we have another difference right there. This is our only other difference? Yeah, so I have 2 opportunities to make up some ground here. But I went with Michigan. And I feel like I'm probably basing a lot of this on their performance against Indiana. Specifically, and I know Indiana still has a great defense, even though they got slaughtered against Ohio State and the offense is terrible. It's easy to overlook how good the defense is when the rest of it looks so terrible. But I think Michigan State on offense probably isn't as good as they have looked so far. And I think Michigan's going to be able to hold Kenneth Walker to under 100 like Indiana was able to do. And that means Peyton Thorne's going to have to be able to decipher this Michigan defense as well. I do think he is capable of doing that. That's why this is a very intriguing matchup. It can go either way, but I'm taking the Wolverines.
I don't think you can make a bad pick in this game. I think these two teams are really good. I think Michigan's just so good on the ground. I haven't seen enough out of Cade McNamara. He can stretch the field. I like Michigan State coming out of the bye. I like Michigan State. Again, over the course of a season, you're going to face some adversity. You're going to run into their bread and butter has been the explosive plays. It's been the trick plays. It's been, hitting the home run. And when that's been taken away from them in games against Nebraska in the second half, and then the whole game against Indiana, they still found a way to win those games. And I think that's why I'm a little higher on Michigan State in this one than a lot of people.
And this will be the last thing before we wrap it up. But do you think that the winner of this game, do you think either one has a fighting? This may be sounding degrading to both the teams, but do you think they have a fighting chance at taking down Ohio State, regardless of the result here?
Do they have a fighting chance? Yes. Do I think they're going to beat Ohio State? No. No. I don't. Back in 2000, I believe it was 18, 19. Michigan's offense, everybody was talking about it. It was finally starting to click, and this was the type of offense that could, give Ohio State some trouble. I don't see it. I really just don't see it. I don't think that they have. You have to be able to be sound. You have to be able to create explosive plays. And while Michigan has done that on the ground this season, they just don't have the dual threat or the balanced offense that you need in order to beat a team like Ohio State.
There you go. Man, I cannot believe we've gone. This is not the episode I thought would go an hour and 15 minutes. I know we've had a couple long ones before, but this is what happens when you come in prepared with other things to talk about because you don't want to bitch about Indiana for 45 minutes to an hour. And we may see more of the same if that ends up being if Indiana isn't able to work things out, because I can confidently say if Indiana doesn't win this weekend, they're not going to a bowl game. I would put money on it. I'm not a betting man, but if I was a betting man, if Indiana loses to Maryland, then I wouldn't get much money for it, but I would bet that Indiana wouldn't end up going to a bowl game. But there you have it. Another episode of This Week in Indiana Football in the books. We'll be back with you next week. Thanks, Dustin, as always. I know you got a World Series game to watch, don't you?
Yeah, let's get to it. Let's go Braves.
Yeah, I don't have a fighting team in this. I was hoping Kyle Schwarber could come in, and I can't remember. Did the Braves beat the Red Sox to get in this, or was it the other way around? Was it like the other division?
Braves beat the Dodgers, the Astros beat the Red Sox.
Okay, so the Red Sox would have been playing against the Braves, but oh well. Be sure to listen to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Dustin's with us on Thursdays. Thanks again, guys. We'll see you next time. We appreciate it. Have a good one.